Hello and welcome to another Flipping the Script. I'm Paul O'Sullivan. I'm the CEO here at Skellig, and with me today is Briana Davis. Welcome, Briana.
Thank you. So my background is heavily in the MES space. I have a little bit of background involving some graphics and a little bit on the automation side, but I heavily focus on pharmacy and Syncade. I went to school for systems and industrial engineering, and I think that is a different path than what most people take to get into this kind of work.
Yeah.
Most people are chemical engineers, maybe a few electrical, mostly chemical. And I think that's given me a different approach to the work in general.
Ooh, interesting. That's cool. That would be cool to hear a bit more of without getting too off topic, because I've got 3 standard questions for you that I've asked everyone, and then I'll invite you to ask a question to me in the end. It'd be cool as we go through this to talk a little bit about your perspective to MES, because my background is process control, and I don't feel like I'm someone that has a very deep or good understanding of how MES functions in life sciences, what it's for, how to do it well. I'm very much in the curious student mindset on MES and what it's for, and I'm thinking more from a first principle standpoint about it. So first question, if you're ready, what kind of impact do you want to make on the world with your career in life sciences?
I'm still fairly new in the pharmaceutical industry. I've only been working full time for 4 years. So I don't know that I have an exact answer of what kind of impact I want to
That's
make.
okay.
I want to have a positive impact. And I definitely see myself going down a route of trying to push these sorts of solutions down to the consumer level at a much more affordable and quicker process. Especially in the big pharma, there's just a lot of red tape, for lack of a better term. And with that comes cost, time. And I think that there are a lot of areas for improvement. And with my lack of experience, I need some more time in order to really pinpoint where those issues are bottlenecking. But I do see definitely an opportunity for improvement in those areas.
One of the things I've heard a lot about in terms of innovation, there's multiple ways to do it well. There's a book that talked about mastery or something like that, just as a general topic. And it was like, imitate the best until you're getting consistent results and then innovate. So, and I felt like that in my career, not that I ever got to be like, I would never have classified myself as like a great engineer. The further into my career I got, the more I felt like I could understand what innovation could be useful and, how could you target something specific to actually make a change. I definitely have always felt full of piss and vinegar to change something, but, how to apply yourself against that, I think I love your answer, because if you're taking that measured approach of become more experienced and then you'll know how to target an innovation, that's a really good, healthy way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of useful tools out there for that as well. It's just a matter of how to apply them. Going back to like my education, we deal with a lot of innovative approaches and like there's Six Sigma, Lean, and all of that stuff out there.
Oh, yeah.
Those certifications. But it's much different taking a class in college and then actually seeing something implemented in the real world. I've yet to see Six Sigma and all of that actually implemented somewhere where, they kind of put it on display. I'm sure that some companies have adopted it and they don't advertise it as such, but it'd be cool to have some experience and see that actually in real life.
Yeah. I'm still, like I said, trying to get my head around MES, but like from a business standpoint, how do you think about these challenges? There's a lot of room for improvement in terms of data model, how you contextualize data, asynchronous data and like live data, and how you pull that all together to tell a story about how a batch happened. And then the EBR is like the core functionality in life sciences for an MES. Whereas if you hear about other industries, they have like OEE and other things they care about. But for you guys in MES, in life sciences, it's very much about the electronic batch record primarily, and then logbooks and other functionalities, right? But
if I was going to describe it to somebody who has never seen anything or heard of it before, I think I would describe it as literally an electronic logbook. I think it really streamlines a process. It allows the operators to follow direction without any deviation. When you're looking at what are the benefits of MES, it's time saving, cost saving in the long run. It's very expensive upfront. I think that's anything though in our industry. Everything's expensive upfront. It sounds kind of fancy and it's not always clear exactly how it fits in the picture, but I do think that its benefits are down at the operator level.
do you have any working theory on like when you think about innovation or improving, say, a longer term, where do you think people, if you're another MES engineer, you're hearing this, where do you think, if you were part of a conversation on innovation, do you have a working theory on well, we need better little modules that do more little things and then those need to be standardized in some way? Or is it like the data infrastructure or do you have any working theory on where the bulk of the innovation is needed?
Yeah, I would definitely say the data structure. MES, as it is now, kind of acts as like a central hub of information. So it's pulling information from multiple systems into one. It works as it is. It can be better. That gets into like your industry 4.0 sort of work, although there's a lot of hesitation there. And I understand why, but pulling from different systems and different methods starts to get pretty hard to keep track of and regulate. But a company like I'm at now, or a client I'm at now, they've perfected it as much as they could at this point. I don't know if they could make it better the way it is. But with that said, every now and then, they get somebody new that has another way of doing it. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's better or worse, but it is different. So that's just something to think about. Just because it's working doesn't mean it's the best.
Right.
But just because it's
that's
new,
where your continuous improvement, Six Sigma stuff comes in. Absolute quality by design and all that kind of stuff. I do have another question just out of pure raw curiosity. From an MES standpoint, do you feel that we have the right target when we think about an outcome from MES? You just said, okay, an MES, it's for serving the operator, it's for this. I agree. But what's the actual tangible outcome? Is it the electronic batch report that says, this is the batch that got made, here's exactly how it got made? Is that the outcome? So, if you were just to describe an MES system in terms of an output, what is the bit that comes out? Is it just that report?
Yeah, it is that report. But the report has so much information that it's not just like, oh, hey, here's what they did. It shows you what they did at the exact time, who was doing it, and what happened if something went wrong. And so as simple as it sounded, it gets pretty complicated trying to make it very robust.
Yeah.
Which is what a company like Emerson and Rockwell, they do very well. And I think that is why things haven't progressed as much in the MES space, because why fix what's broken? But there are opportunities like in the data infrastructure to improve. And I don't know that there's that much incentive for these like legacy systems, as we call them, to go that direction. But yes, the EBR is like the tangible, the actual, what you would see. I guess you could print it out and hold it in your hand and say, this is what we made.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. I've got a couple of more questions, but I think I should probably hold them because I should contract. This next one's kind of related to what we're talking about, but do you feel the industry gives you permission to affect change?
There are certain aspects that permit some change, but I think there's a lot of barriers, especially at an individual level, to implement change. There are a lot of reasons, but I think when you look at the overarching themes, it's time, cost, and risk. Back in like the 90s, which I obviously wasn't in the industry then, but when the internet started to become a thing and all of this new technology, there weren't a lot of regulations with it. And so I think a lot of companies at the time didn't realize the risk that they were taking by implementing the technologies. And then it kind of bit back on them. Now, with that experience, a lot of these companies don't see the pros outweighing the cons and taking a risk on a new kind of technology or like a new way of doing things. And then also, like I said, the cost is like to train up, not just in development, paying the engineers to do it, but then also you're training all of your employees to do with an entirely new system. And that's not just your operators, that's also the business and quality. And it just starts to get so boggled. You don't really know which direction is the right direction. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of hesitation for change, but I do see it happening slowly. I
Same.
also think a lot of companies are kind of waiting for somebody else to take the step.
Absolutely. That's 100% life sciences. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
it in a nutshell. I totally agree with everything you're saying there. From the outside looking in as more of a process control person, what I see with MES2 is that the legacy stuff, it's doing the job. And then there's a security mindset, not a service mindset around like, all right, how do we serve the operator? How do we get them the information they need when they need it? It's kind of more of a security first approach. And I do think that, when I've listened to trainings with Walker Reynolds and stuff like that, what he talks about then is like, that's where you need to begin around digital transformation. If you are going to digitally transform, a lot of that mindset is what you need to iron out first. Are you moving towards more of a service mindset? When you move into that territory, you start to say, all right, let's get some cool new platforms in, then that's where a lot of maturity is still needed around these technologies, especially from a validation standpoint, and working honestly as a collective through those problems, because there is value. There's a huge incentive to get there, but we do have to be collectively aligned. We've got to be able to validate this stuff. It's got to be clean. We got to be able to, protect the integrity of batch data. In terms of permission to affect change, you talked about like on an individual level. Do you feel like there's anything practical, or is it just the nature of like the GMP process? And
It's hard to do something new. But I will say, in your day-to-day work, there is a lot of innovation happening. It's not on a big level, it's little
Yep.
things that impact your day-to-day work. For example, one of the Skellig employees at the client, they created like Python scripts that help us to like copy and paste parameters. I'm trying not to use like too big of language.
No, you're good.
Last week, they cut my work down by 2 days just by using a script that they created, which was, that's not something that the client is using or anything like that. It's to us internal, but it's impressive at a small level, the impacts that you can have.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's awesome. And it's those little changes that do advance things, because then they compound over time, but it also changes the mindset, and we get away from this, oh, it's a big messy project. Let's just get in there and chaotically stay busy for 2 to 3 years and whatever happens, happens. But being more of a ownership mindset on like, we could improve this. We could make a safe innovation here that could really help progress things. And then the project costs go down. I'm glad you guys are thinking like that. If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about the industry, what would you change?
Again, that feels like a loaded question.
It is. They're all.
And I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but we are engineers, but we're also consumers of some of the products that we put out. So you kind of get both perspectives of an internal and a consumer level. If I could wave a magic wand, it would be, we would be able to make product and get it to the consumer at a lower rate, at a quicker rate. Unfortunately, it's the nature of, capitalism. We need to make money, but I don't think people realize the amount of money that these companies spend to make the product to begin with. And so when you look at high prices, it's easy to kind of demonize the big companies, but at the end of the day, they're also spending
Yep.
an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
No, it feels kind of not unattainable, but who wouldn't want, a better process, a quicker process, and a cheaper process? But it's just not always as simple as it sounds. So
I love thinking about that problem too. That's what I'm kind of obsessed with. The way I see it is that I'm looking at things like Mark Cuban's cost plus drugs. I'm like, ooh, that's cool, but you're still buying a product that's, not necessarily that it's made overseas is the problem, but you're working on the price problem, but you're not working on, there's a lot of room for improvement, I think, on working on can we reduce the cost of making the medicine in a very high quality, close to the patient environment. That's speaking to innovation. And I think there's a lot possible with better use of data, better use of, engineers like yourself thinking about the problem and making small improvements, because it seems like the industry is headed towards more personalized medicine and more smaller batches. We hear a lot in new projects that like, oh, this facility has to be flexible. Whereas like maybe 20 years ago, it was like, we're going to build something and it's going to make this one thing for 10 years. So we'll hard pipe everything, hard code everything, and away we go. You in MES then is particularly challenged because when you're trying to build an MES system around flexibility, that's presenting some really big challenges to us currently.
Even at our small level of flexibility, it's that I think is like the most rewarding work, is when you can create something that can be used for 5 different methods or 5 different pieces of equipment, and you only had to do it once, and so now we've saved all this time versus creating this something similar 5 times. So I'm actually I'm working on that right now, trying to reduce the amount of time I'm going to spend creating something 6 times over.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I think that is a big part of MES and automation in general, is trying to create things that we can reuse.
I've seen a mindset shift in engineers in general compared to 20 years ago, let's say. I still see the same. Most engineers want to do a great job, but I don't think engineers are as resigned to the infrastructure in which they can make. I think there's a lot of appetite for innovation and change, and people are asking more questions about why is it done this way? And could we make it better? Could we explore this technology? Could we use this thing? Could we innovate here? And both on the client and on the integrator side, I think there's more of a reception to that. Whereas I do feel like there was a way of doing things that was harder and slower to change. So I know you're 4 years in the industry. I think 15, 16. And I feel like there's been a shift for the better in terms of like acceptance of innovation as an idea, rather than, there's a right way to do it and don't question it, So
yeah, I think the companies now, if they don't adopt at least some sort of mindset geared towards change, then they're probably going to sink. So.
Yeah, I love your comment on the Six Sigma stuff too. That's exactly the W. Edwards Deming, the guy who did a lot of the work that kind of led to the Toyota way, just looking at that systems thinking and a practical approach to creating that outcome, just baking quality into the design rather than trying to, do anything afterwards, like inspect quality in. Any question for me?
Yeah, I think...
You don't have to have one, by the way.
Well, I mean, you kind of answered it a little bit, but what kind of change have you seen in the industry, and what kind of resistance to change have you seen? And then a follow-up would be, what advice would you have for somebody in my position going forward?
Ooh. I'd start with the advice and I'll work back to the other bit. The advice is the same advice I always give myself. It's, have patience with people. Change is hard. It's not natural. It's not part of human nature. So when you're trying to affect change, you need to be really patient. And then you also need to work on your own messaging. Like a lot of it, I think it's Richard Feynman that said it. Simple ideas transfer, complicated ones don't. So if I'm describing something really complicated, which I have burdened plenty of people with my complicated ideas, and they've had to sit there and listen to them and then go like, do I do with that, Paul? I've gotten more buy-in, breaking a large effort down into a small effort and maybe referencing, hey, if we could do this step, then we could do these other steps that could lead to this big outcome. Thinking small and or think big is something that I would highly encourage you to do. So like when you show up later today or tomorrow on your project, like what are the things, just like you're thinking about, you've got 6 things to do that are similar. What could I do with a script or something to, because if you're scripting it as well, you're probably taking out the human error out of it. So it's really to be encouraged as well, because it's increasing quality. And so I would say stay tenacious on that path, and then stay patient with the people that are resistant to what you're trying to improve, because they might have a point. They might be helping you actually improve your innovation, or roadblocks can be really helpful too, to help you refine the usefulness of what you're trying to innovate. Then the first part of the question was more geared to what have I seen, I think, was it?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think what I've seen is it might be the nature of my job too, because I've changed more to just doing management stuff now, whereas I used to be on the plant floor and on the projects as an engineer. Clients have a big appetite now for exactly what you're saying. They know something's coming, and they know the normal approach from a business strategy perspective to manufacturing. It needs to adapt and change. There is an acknowledgement of that, but there isn't an understanding of how. And then whenever we talk as either system integrators or consultants, or they bring in a product, it seems like there isn't an easy to understand way to approach the problem. So what I'm seeing is that, we've moved the ball down the field a little bit, but now we're stuck in a new challenge, which is like, does everyone understand how we might approach fixing the challenge? And then can we agree on a path forward? Broadly speaking, I've seen a change from, no, we don't like innovation. We make what we make. We do it how we do it, and it works well, to, oh crap, yeah, we definitely will need to change. Our bigger bosses are asking us to change and make stuff more flexibly, and this and that, the other thing. So business goals have changed. We're at the stage now where it's leadership on an automation plant floor level are asking, how can we adapt and how can we do so safely? And I will say, from an MES perspective, when I started my career in like 2005, 2006, I started doing a lot of work on Delta V, and honestly, Delta V was my world. And I didn't really, we never talked about an ERP system or about an MES system. It was like Delta V, we load a batch, and then we talked about things like a batch report, but it was on paper,
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, I feel like MES is so new as well to life sciences to a degree.
For sure. Even when I started my first MES project, it was completely new at the facility. So they still had the paper logbooks on the floor, which was kind of cool to see something completely new be implemented like that, and to be a part of a project that had to see what it's like to put something new into a space. I think that was a great experience, but it was also just cool to see how they would do that transition. So.
Yep. No, that's awesome. Very good. All right. I guess that's it. We could keep talking about MES, but I don't think we should expose everything to that. So, thank you so much, Briana.
Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. All right. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.